morning, everyone. We're just going to give it a moment for everyone to come in this morning. I see everyone's starting to come in now, so. All righty. All right, well, good morning, everyone. On behalf of the HIA-LI, I want to thank everyone for joining us for the 10th Annual Women's Leading the Way Executive Program. My name is Tony Joy Candela. I am the Office Manager with the HIA-LI. There are several people that we want to thank this morning before we get started. First, we'd like to thank our board members who are joining us. They play a crucial role in moving the HIA-LI's initiatives forward on a daily basis. So I just want to thank them for all that they do and their work with the organization. Next, we'd like to thank our HIA-LI sponsors. Without our sponsors, we wouldn't be able to put on the program like that we have this morning. So we'd like to thank our People's Alliance Federal Credit Union, City National Bank, Farrell Fritz, and NST for being today's event program sponsors. So thank you again. And at this point, I'd like to pass it over to Teresa Ragnante, President and CEO of the HIA-LI.
Oh, thanks so much, Tony Joy. And good morning, everyone. Hope you're staying healthy and Long Island strong. It was probably 2010 when we had the opportunity to participate in a roundtable that Senator Kirsten Gillibrand brought together a group of women business leaders really to talk about and get feedback on childcare issues and how do you blend and how do people and women in particular that start businesses, how do they have access to business capital and equality and issues like that. And, I remember going around the group and I remember telling a story about when I was very, very young in my career. I had a mentor who gave me probably the best piece of advice that I hold with me still today in being a women business leader. And one of the things he happened to say to me was, don't worry about if you're male or female, right? Just practice the profession of business and practice the profession of being the best business person you could be in terms of understanding when you run an organization, profit and loss statements and balance sheets and how to deal with people and how to lead and inspire. And that was the best piece of advice I could have gotten, at least as a business person at the time that I've carried with me. We were in that roundtable. The senator inspired us to carry out and have a forum to really talk to other women about, how to get ahead and what to do and what this will look like and how to lift each other up. So I'm very proud of this initiative. We're in our 10th year. And I think we're going to watch a video right now from the senator who's saying a few words to us, particularly about women in business and this conference. And I don't know that we can hear her. At least I cannot hear her right now.
I don't think we can.
I can't, yeah.
No? All right, let's see if we can just quickly reboot that again. And if not, essentially what she's telling us, I will translate for her, is obviously the importance of women and the importance of women to business, so, and Ariana, you know what? It's okay, don't worry about it. So, in essence, what she was telling us is that there are about 10 million women-owned businesses in America right now, just so you know. They employ over 13 million right now and have an economic output of 1.9 trillion, not million, but trillion in this economy. So women-owned businesses in particular are a force to be reckoned with. And listen, whether we own a business, whether we manage and lead a business, whether we're just starting out in our career, I think that what we remember about what we're going to talk about today is we contribute, and we contribute in a very, very, very large way. So I couldn't be more honored to have this powerhouse panel really with us this morning, and equally as honored to have Dominique Camacho Moran back with us, who has moderated pretty much every single year for us and really brings out the goodness in everybody in this panel. So Dominique is a partner with Ferraro Fritz. She leads the Employment and Labor Division. I cannot imagine how busy you are right now through COVID and beyond, Dominique. So we really appreciate you being with us, and I'm gonna send it over to you.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you for having me again. And it has been an honor to participate with the HIA. This breakfast has now been a part of my annual participation for a lot of years. And we know that as we look at 2020, it will never be looked at the way we thought it would. It doesn't look that way. It doesn't feel that way. And this morning, we're going to talk a little bit about how each of these incredible women have managed to lead successful organizations before COVID, but maybe as importantly during COVID. We all know that during this time, there's some fatigue. It is what it is. We all have to get up and do it every day. And these three women are incredible leaders who each in their own way are contributing to the Long Island community. So let me start with Debbie. If I can ask you to introduce yourself to our audience in about a minute.
Okay. Well, thank you. And thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be on the panel this morning. My name is Debbie Krennick, and I'm the publisher of Newsday. I've been the publisher for more than 2 years and have been working at Newsday for almost 20 years. But I grew up in Texas, part of a large family, eating barbecue, listening to country music, and with a love of writing that started when I was 5 years old. Got into journalism in high school, writing for the local paper and being editor of the high school paper. And then I came to New York in 1987 and spent 14 years at the New York Daily News, where I was editor for 3 of those years. My love of technology led me to jump into the digital world as chief creative officer at petplace.com, that's a story, in 2000, only a few months before the dot-com crash. A year later, I moved to Newsday, where I was editor, and I built our digital strategy over the years before becoming publisher. I have 2 grown children whom I adore, and I live in Brooklyn with my husband, who's also a journalist.
Thank you, Debbie. Good morning and welcome. Teresa Ragnante, how about you?
Okay, thank you all. Good morning. Yes, Teresa Ragnante, the President and Chief Executive here with the United Way of Long Island. It's funny, Debbie, in your introduction, the one thing that we might share is that, I went to college, I think it was like 1980, and country music, going from the south, going from the north to the south was interesting. And when the students were around the classroom talking about, who they were, a lot of students talked about bluegrass music down in North Carolina. And I was, I guess I just told the truth. I said, wow, is that some sort of new marijuana, bluegrass? I had no idea that bluegrass coming from the north was actually, a genre of music. So, but I've been here with the organization as the president for 11 years. My almost entire career has been in the health and human service industry since about probably 1987. I went to college on a tennis scholarship, and I continued to play tennis after I graduated from school and stayed down as a coach and did a few things. But then I decided to come back up north, and I started my career with the not-for-profit sector. Have always been in the fundraising side, the administration side of the business. And then when the opportunity came and was presented to me to be the president here of this organization in 2009, I jumped into the role as president. I live in Bayshore. I have a 15-year-old, very active young girl. So if you know about Tigger the Tiger, you know, fun, 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 life, life, life. That's my life, 24/7. But we are very grateful to be here with you this morning and have this chat. Thank you.
Thank you. And welcome, Teresa. Teresa and I have known each other for quite a while. The thing we probably share most of all is our love of golf. And we have had the opportunity to do some of that, not this year, but in years past, and always a pleasure. Teresa from East West, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Dominique. It is, again, a pleasure to be part of this panel. I really appreciate, I'm truly honored, and I'm surrounded by two great women here too. So thank you, ladies. Nice to meet you, Debbie, and I know Teresa as well. But so I'm Teresa Ferraro, President and CEO of East West Industries. We are a Ronkonkoma-based manufacturer of life support and ground support equipment on military contracts. And I can tell you that I am, the love for my business, it is a family-owned business. I'm president and CEO, but I've been working here for 37 years. So to say that I love what I do and I have a passion, that definitely is it. From my personal life, I am married to a wonderful, supportive husband for 35 years. So he's put up with me for all that time. So he truly must love me. And I have two wonderful children, son-in-law, and I have two beautiful granddaughters, 2 and 4. So that's definitely, that makes me smile. So if you see my face beaming.
Good morning. So Teresa, I'm going to start with you because we share something that is one of those things that I think helps women along the way. There's this wonderful phrase that has gotten to be very popular in the last, I would say, couple of years. She believed she could, so she did. Mm-hmm. And although I am not a graduate of Sacred Heart Academy, my daughter is, and I know that she shares that with you. When did you first believe you could lead an organization?
Wow. So I will tell you that, you know, coming into East West, so as I said, it was a family-owned business. My parents started it 52 years ago. So when I came out of college and I entered East West, you know, it was difficult. As I said, we're an engineering manufacturing firm that produces life support equipment for the military. So it's probably the 3 most male-dominated segments that I was entering. And just put on top of that, oh, I was the boss's daughter. So I really came into this really knowing that I had to prove myself. But the best way to really show the employees that I was a team member. I wasn't there overlooking them, looking over their shoulders. I wanted to gain the knowledge that they had, that they brought to East West for their prior years in order to help me learn more about that organization. So I'll tell you, it was really hard at the very beginning. You know, I was, you know, the boss's daughter. And, you know, that was a struggle to overcome. But I think gaining the confidence with the employees and the management team that I was there to help and support and grow. But I'll tell you, I worked side by side with my dad for 30 years. I had the wonderful opportunity to learn from the best. He was truly my father, my friend, and my mentor. And he passed away 7.5 years ago. But I tell you, from the moment I was groomed for those 30 years, but I have to tell you, the day after he passed, that's when I walked back into the office knowing I need to lead the team. And that was really eye-opening, and been successfully doing it, and I love every day of it.
Thank you. Debbie, I'm not sure that when you start writing at 5, your immediate thought is, oh, and someday I'm going to be the publisher. How did you get there?
You know, so it's a good question, and in some ways a complicated one. My career has taken a lot of twists and turns. But growing up, I always led things like clubs or small groups of people, you know, in my first job. But I think, you know, as you move up the ladder, it gets harder and the stakes are higher, right? As you're leading bigger organizations and, you know, everybody is looking up to you. So at least for me, I always had some doubts as I went along, or reservations about, was I the right person for the job? Could I do this? Could I move things forward, and would people respect me? And I kind of don't think there's anything wrong with that. You kind of go into it with like, okay, I'm going to really push forward and do this. And I guess for me, it was a little bit of an internal reality check. But what I learned over time was that, if somebody is recommending you for the job or for a promotion, it really means they believe in you and your ability, and you need to believe in yourself as well. And so sometimes that's really, all you need to build your confidence. And I think for me, having changed jobs a fair amount, that was part of it, because at the time that I was coming along, most of the people in the higher positions were men, and there weren't a lot of women in the business. And so that was hard, and you sometimes had self-doubts. But once I started taking jobs and doing more and more and getting more and more responsibility, and realizing that, hey, I can do this, and it doesn't seem so daunting. At least I guess that's how it worked for me. It was kind of a progression as it went along.
So Teresa Ragnante, I can never imagine a moment when you lacked any confidence. You are one of the most, or you appear to be one of the most confident women I know, and always an inspiration. But when did it first occur to you that leading organizations, candidly leading the United Way on Long Island, such an incredible organization that serves so much of our population, when did it become real for you?
What I didn't really think about is, I didn't think of the position as leading an organization. I honestly, from a really, really young age, I mean, the competition, the tennis, the being very much determined, being sort of like growing up with 4 brothers and sisters, and a competitive spirit, extraordinary, accomplished parents. And so it wasn't as though it was sort of like a thought in the forefront. It was sort of like just sort of ingrained that, one day, with a lot of experience in the way in which you mature in your life and your business and your and how well you hone your craft, you're going to get to that place where people are going to then look at you and look around you and say, wow, whether you're young or 35, 40, 45, you're ready because of really the sort of experience and the traction and the relationships that you had. So I mean, similar to the other panelists, family really helped inspire the confidence that it wasn't about being the president of the United Way. It was honestly being in a position that I knew, being a leader, I could really make a much different impact than my predecessors had. And growing up and looking at that industry all the way through, leading with heart and integrity is, I think, for the not-for-profit sector, really valuable, and the business side is now secondary to me, because I've known it, I've lived it, I've grown up in it, and it's really how you sort of push forward with your your creativity, your courage, and then move an organization with you. And I just have a lot of fun doing it. So I think that's, I love what I do. So every day is an interesting challenge, which I enjoy.
So you used the word courage. And with so many things that have happened in 2020, the one that sort of sticks out with the word courage, among lots of others, is that we lost RBG, whose initials have somehow become iconic in and of themselves. When I went to law school, when I started practicing, Ruth Bader Ginsburg was Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Never thought about her as RBG, but she's now best known in that way. And she certainly lived her life with an awful lot of courage. She has one quote, though, that I thought was kind of interesting. And it is, anger, resentment, indulgence in recriminations, waste time, and sap energy. I'm curious, how do you choose when to get angry? And when do you choose not to fight the battle, but to move on?
So I don't actually get angry, which is interesting. I'm the middle child of 5. So my life has been the peacemaker, the negotiator, and I still play that role with my family today. And so what I bring to the office and the environment and my management team is really trying to be in a position that, when things don't go as well as they ought to go, I normally would get disappointed. And I think the disappointment is my group knows what that is, and we rally together, and I've got to be the leader that says, so, how do we do better? How do we get through this? And thank God I tell my family as well as people in my world that thank God we're not neurosurgeons, because if we make a mistake, it's okay. we'll course correct. So I think anger doesn't really play a place in space for me. It just never has. And leading in a calm as you possibly can environment, not to get too agitated, is I think really important, because people walk in here all the time and said, how do you sort of just stay steady? I said, I don't know. I think it's just a God-given talent that I don't get rattled that way.
So Teresa from East West, I wonder whether in the defense business, you have come across leaders who clearly get angry and how you respond to that.
So I wanted to dovetail off what Teresa was saying, that I agree, anger and resentment, and it drains you. It's a waste of energy. And I too believe that, I kind of handle how you would raise your children, that you might want to get angry, but you communicate to them, address the issue, and then move on. Because the more that you just keep festering over something, it truly is, it's draining to yourself, it's draining to others, and it gives off, just such a negative feeling to others. And people are very in tune to that. So yeah, I've definitely come across, but I guess in my way of being able to talk and communicate to others that might be angry, I can deflect it a little bit. And that too might be just a little natural habit, but I agree. Anger and resentment is just a waste of time.
So Debbie, in the world that we are currently living in, there's an awful lot of anger that gets covered by the media. It's a story as often as it is part of your world. I'm wondering how you find the balance in the news business of covering the anger without becoming angry.
Good question. I do want to say one thing before I answer that, and that is I had such admiration, I think as we all do, for Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She was an amazing woman, an amazing leader for the country. And I remember I was sitting in the kitchen on the night that the news came over that she had passed away. And my daughter, who also admired her, we were on the phone together crying because we just felt like, the voice of reason, one of the voices of reason in the country was gone. And, and that was hard. And so, yes, you're right. It's in the news business, there is a lot of anger out in the country right now. And I think at Newsday, we have always, even before this time, really tried very hard to report things straight down the middle and talk to all sides of an issue and present all sides of an issue. And that is keenly important to us. And that's what's important about local journalism and what we do. It is hard sometimes. We have, reporters that, or videographers, that are sometimes yelled at in different situations, but everybody tries to, approach that understanding that people are angry and that we're here to tell their stories. And that's really what we try to do.
And so in this space where we have anger in our world and there are lots of different viewpoints, how do you manage the different viewpoints in the organization so that it raises up the level as opposed to divides your team?
Also a good question. I think I think now more than ever, as businesses are transitioning in a, at least for us, in a digital world, and people are learning new skills, and and also you have a much kind of a wider breadth of employees, with different points of view. I think it has to do with transparency and with communication. I think, in all of our teams, that's what we try to foster, and we try to give everyone a voice. And, if you're in a meeting, we're not all going to agree, but we all should have respect for each other's ideas and listen to each other's ideas. And it's a kind of an interesting thing. You would see over time that people get swayed, in terms of, you go in thinking one thing. I find that with myself all the time. I might go in thinking one thing and come out thinking something totally different. So I just think communication is key. I think giving everyone their voice, no matter what their point of view, is key. And trying to work to bring that team together, because really, if the team respects each other, they can all disagree, but you're still going to move forward in a really strong way.
So you raise a good point. I think one of the things that I value most as I have grown in the business and become more and more responsible for other people is my ability to be swayed. I think it is incredibly important that I have a viewpoint, but it can't be a viewpoint that is not capable of change. And so, Teresa from East West, when you look at your organization, what is a trait that you think has really contributed to your success as a leader of that organization?
Definitely, I would say the two areas that I truly believe a lot has led to my success is being a good communicator to the team and being a good listener. People might hear, but they don't always listen. My father always taught me that everyone's going to have a different viewpoint, and if they don't feel that they're being heard, they feel that they're not bringing value to you. So I've really made sure that I created, not only with my management team, but with all the employees, is that listen to their needs, engage with them, and be a good communicator. We at top management sometimes always think that everybody knows what's going on. But if you don't communicate what your path is, what your goals are, and you don't communicate that to the entire team, you're not a great leader.
Teresa from United Way, Colin Powell once said, there are no secrets to success. It is the result of preparation, hard work, and learning from failure. So I'm going to ask you to dig deep. There's got to be a failure somewhere along the way in your life that helped to prepare you for where you are today. What might that be?
Well, I think the failure is sort of like a thread of, I'll say, from a place of thinking that, when you go to school and you go to college and you say, well, what do I want to be and what do I want to do and how do I want to, live my life? And then my personal failure was probably not pushing hard enough in relationship to really making a decision early on to say, hey, I actually wanted to be an attorney. And one of the things that I shied away from was the hard work. I was a late bloomer. I was not a real good student. I went to college because I was gifted and I played tennis. And if not for getting a tennis scholarship, I'm not sure if I would have tracked that way. So, the failure was from a belief system that, hey, to push a little harder. I was a little lazy. Sort of like that really then is something you have to sort of like overcome, because it's internal, right? It's inbred, and it's sort of like, when I find myself getting into a little bit of malaise, I have to figure out, okay, how do you kickstart the engine, and how do you stay motivated? But the failure, it is interesting, I think, now in our business and in the not-for-profit sector, because what I usually lead now with is that it really isn't about being right. It's about being smart and really having the courage to be a little vulnerable, if you will, to sort of accept, you know, what's happening in your surrounding world, and then pivot to really show some leadership and listen and communicate well. And it's not really about your way. It really has to become a shared sort of movement, especially with senior management teams. And it's okay if your way isn't the path chosen, right? You have to figure out how to be much more in a compromising place and space in all our businesses, right? Because it's not a top-down world any longer. It's really sort of valuing everybody and everybody's contribution. So that's been a real generational shift and change. And you know, leaders are in their 40s and 50s and early 60s and running businesses. There's a lot of young people on the journey with us, and we have to pay attention differently. So I think like being now in a place of moving forward in organizations, not about being right as the president or the leader. It's really about being smart and being tactful and having the courage to be a little vulnerable that, you know what, it's okay if it's not your way. That's really important.
Debbie, just to sort of follow that up with pre-COVID, what was the biggest challenge you had faced as a leader?
Good question. I would say I would think that would have to be the day of 9/11, and you know, all the many months after that. At that point in time, I was running digital for New York Newsday, and you know, I think many of the feelings were the same then as people are feeling now during the pandemic. There was so much fear and uncertainty, and the need to keep you know, pushing forward as things seemed in some ways dire. We had we had some employees who had family members perish, and that we had employees who couldn't get into the office to work. We had employees who really needed the leader to step up and get them through this. And, you know, that was, you know, mostly in that particular case on my shoulders in that office. It was not a huge office. And it was something that, you know, I knew was not going away in a week, and that we would have to live with for a long time. And I think, you know, it took, we had to marshal, you know, how we were going to do work. We really couldn't be in the city, in the place where we were. You know, we had to, people were dealing with different things. Some people lived in the city and couldn't get out of the city to come to work. So there's, you know, there was just, there was a lot going on, and there was a lot of emotion. And it was a time where we were bringing the New York City website online. So it was most important for us to get news out to people on a, you know, a minute by minute basis. And, you know, just, you know, talking to everyone continually and encouraging them and working with them, and, you know, being, you know, thoughtful about what they were going through and trying to be flexible. And that was a very hard time. And I feel like it's in some ways similar to this, or helped at least me to prepare, understand, you know, how to, you know, deal with the pandemic and what people are thinking and what they're facing.
Teresa from East West, what is an example of a lesson you've learned, not from the successes of your career, but from the challenges or the failures?
So it's, when you had asked Teresa from United Way that question, really had to kind of look deep into myself. And one thing that I've learned was, you know, in business, you're going to have failures. You're going to have mistakes. Everyone, and it was such a great question, Dominique, that you asked, because when we're on panels, what do we like to do? You like to, all the great things that happen, you want to motivate people, but it's really okay to say, there have been some failures. I've definitely made some bad business decisions, maybe a contract that I took on that was maybe a little bit more than, I bit off more than I can chew. But it's okay. It's okay to understand that in business, my dad would always say, that's why erasers are on pencils. It's a perfect saying that there's going to be mistakes and it's okay, but it's how you face it, how you address it, and how you learn and move on from there. It's probably the most important thing about, saying I failed is not a bad word. It's how you come out of that.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. There's, and her name is totally escaping me, so forgive me. There's a wonderful book about raising daughters. And one of the things the author points to is we always talk about our resume, and she suggests that you share with your daughter a resume of your failures.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it is such an incredibly important topic as we look at mentoring women who are joining our organizations, mentoring other business women. Sharing the parts of what we do well is great.
Mm-hmm.
And that gives lots of inspiration. And Teresa from United Way, I think you used the word vulnerability first. And I think that's what it's about. Those failures are about sharing the vulnerability that we don't always immediately go to when we think about what should we do. So Teresa from East West, let me start with you. I know you talked about your dad and how important a role model he was for you. Is there anyone else that you can look to say, that's who I want to be like?
I have to say, I'm going to go back to my dad. And, we as women, you always say you want to have a woman role model. It's great to look at. But I always look at a role model is really someone that shares similar values. You look at them to say, you look at their accomplishments, how they handled their failures. But who you want to emulate is really deep within. And, my dad was very insightful, and I say this all the time, that he was a degreed mechanical engineer, but he had a wonderful sales and marketing background. Two opposite, parts of the brain that, for someone to succeed that way, and he overcame a lot of obstacles and failures in his life, losing a mom very early on and being, put out to the street and to fend for his own at a very early age. I look at that and I say, he overcame them. So I have to be honest, when someone says to me, who's my role model, I always go back to saying my dad.
That's a great answer. And it's always encouraging when you can be a successful woman leader and the role model doesn't have to be a woman. Yeah. Because we don't always have that at the ready. Mm-hmm. Teresa from United Way, who's the role model that you strive most to emulate?
So, I was very affected with, obviously, going back to my tennis days, and my coach in high school was really an extraordinary person. She really took the time to take an interest. And at the time when I was growing up in high school, I shared that I have 4 brothers and sisters, and my oldest sister at 18 was diagnosed bipolar, and that was in 78, 79. So prior to the acceptance of mental health illness, and it really shook the family. It shook the family in a way, she tried to commit suicide when she was in college. My mom had to get her. She brought her home, and our life had changed. But the constant in my life was my coach. And no matter what was going on, and when I think of those days for my sister, and who she's 60 now, and I'm very close to her. I'm the only sibling here on Long Island with her. My other siblings live in other states. And my parents are here, so tag on it with mom, dad, who are 87, 91, and my sisters. But it's not, but it's all good. I mean, I have capacity, right? God gives you what you can handle. So I think my tennis coach is the person always that was the constant, that was the motivator, that was, you can do it, you can climb, that mountain, you need some help. It was just a really kind individual with a lot of gratitude. And I learned early on that, it wasn't really about me, because I was a cocky kid. I was really great at my craft, and she helped me sort of change that perspective that it wasn't really ever going to be about me. And I think that knowing that at 15 was a life lesson that I've stayed very true to. So I'm in debt to her. She passed away tragically 8 years ago in a car accident, just a freak accident. A bee came into the car. She hated bees. She turned the wheel too hard. There was construction. She went overturned in the car, ejected from the car, tragically died. But I still go by her house. You know, it's not a week that goes by that, you know, I don't think about, wow, what an incredible mark that she's made on me and so many others. That teachers are great, coaches are great. They rise to the occasion for their kids, and because they're their kids. She didn't have children, so we were her kids, which was really great.
Debbie, in the news business, there are lots of opportunities to get to know people who have made historic marks on our world. But I'm curious, who's the role model for you that has most impacted who you are today?
So I'm going to kind of go back to the question you had answered before to answer this question a little bit. So the question about failures. I think for me, part of learning is learning to fail. Like I grew up in a family. My mom was very strict. I had to make straight A's, and the bottom line for that was that I sometimes was afraid to put myself out there or take chances in a situation in which I would fail, right? Because failure didn't really feel like an option. And so I think in my own career, sometimes that has hindered me in terms of, you know, being aggressive about how I'm going to move forward and what I'm going to do. So I have, as role models, I think I have two, honestly. One is Alicia Patterson, who, you know, founded Newsday and was the first female publisher, and who believes so much in the importance of local reporting and what that means to a community. I read the books, although I don't know her, but I read the books. I feel like I know her. She was a woman that took chances. She was fierce. She did not let adversity get her down in any way, shape, or form. When her father, who was actually the owner of the New York Daily News, strangely enough, would not give her a real job at the publication because she was a woman, she set out on her own to build something important on Long Island. And she certainly did that with Newsday. And to me, that's just a characteristic that I really admire. And the same, my other, role model would be Katherine Graham from the Washington Post. I have met her in the past, and she's amazing. But in some ways, she has the exact same story or similar story as Alicia. She found herself thrust in the role of the leader at the Washington Post when her husband passed away, and she had not, been a part of the Washington Post or anything like that. And she became an amazing leader amidst, a lot of naysaying by people in the industry who thought that, she would not be able to do this. She actually made the tough decision to publish the Watergate stories, even when the powerful in Washington were telling her that her reporters had it wrong. And, everyone on the business side of the Washington Post was telling her if she published that, it would kill the paper at the time. So I think for me, these are two women that have, courage and passion and guts, and they believe so fiercely in what they were doing and how important it was. And I feel that way. And so I guess I admire them, and I've, have followed everything that they've done in history.
So we have, in the last 10 months, lived through a very different experience. If someone had said to me at this breakfast last year, oh, by the way, next year we'll be in complete shutdown on your birthday in April, that was just not fathomable. So we've used and heard the word pivot, but for you, what is the one quality that has been most essential in the last 10 months?
I think I would say transparency. I think that is so important. In our organization, we have, as everyone does, people are seeing people losing their jobs, losing family members. There's so much uncertainty in the economy and elsewhere. And so, for me, it's doing everything I can to keep our employees informed about the business, about, going back to work, about, their health, anything that affects them, I think is crucial. And it's hard because you can't, you can't be transparent about everything, but you have to sort of dig deep and say, I'm going to tell them this, I'm going to tell them this, and they're going to be on this journey. And I think, they really appreciate that, because I'm sure it's the same in all of your organizations. I think our employees are working harder than they ever did during this pandemic. You're at home, you're on your Zoom, you're up at 7, you don't shut it down. So I think it's, so they really feel part of the team that's helping, move the business forward. And so I think that's the most important thing.
Teresa from United Way, I gave this question some thought before I decided to ask it. And for me, the answer is be kind. I think it is easy to sort of be very focused on how you think this should go. And for me, it's remembering that everyone is dealing with this and everybody has a different story. So if we remember to be kind in how we respond, that I think has been critical for me. But I'm curious, Teresa, what about for you?
So, one of the things that I've learned, and I promised, so I'm 58. When I turned 50, I said, I'm just going to really start telling the truth. Telling the truth to systems, to government, to leaders, and really start to tell the truth from the side of the client. And for people to start looking at systems, not as cases. So when Superstorm Sandy hit, we were helping 1,000 people. It wasn't case number 159-346, 2013. And still today, trying to, I just got a call this morning early from a client who's in Freeport, who is still battling with losing her home and going into recapture. The woman's, 75 years old. She, doesn't have the documents from 2013. And we fight every day for people. And because people by nature are good. And you have to really be in a place, in a space that you could talk to, whether it's the governor's office, the county's office, New York Rise, whatever the situation is. And now in this pandemic, the same thing. This morning on the way here, I stopped to get a cup of coffee at 7-Eleven, and there was a family in a car. And I saw the fella taking his t-shirt and wrapping it around his face to make like a mask, and I'm like, oh my God, he's got the 2 kids in the car. No one's got the mask. So I saw that he was struggling, and I, gestured for him to come over, and I happened to have all these brand new, masks in the car. You should see my car. I carry around, gift cards for Stop and Shop. I've got, masks. I've got sanitizer, and no matter, and the whole staff, my whole staff now is encouraged that they can do the same thing. So in crisis and in a pandemic, whether it's 9/11, Sandy, and now this, organizations have to rise up and be leading in a way where you're really doing very small acts of kindness. So when I gave this guy 3 new masks in this package, you would have thought it was $20,000, because he was like, oh my God, thank you so much. And it's not about thanking me. I mean, the United Way works, and all organizations work because of the investment that donors make. And we have the benefit of being the connector to the help, but we can't help unless this community is supportive. And Long Islanders have been great. Foundations, labor unions, companies, people. So, the way forward, honestly, like you said it, Dominique, everybody taking a little pause, being a little bit kinder, compassion, recognizing we all don't come from the same places and spaces, equity isn't necessarily something that's in all our lives of, 2.7 million people who live here. And you've got to trust the fact there are people trying to do the right thing to help others, give them a little bit of a helping hand. And that's the way we lead here, because if not, what would we do? We should shut down, because you have to lead with the fact that the truth in helping people and having compassion doing it is really the way lives turn around, with a little bit of hope. And that's what we do. We give a little bit of hope because people are entrusting, in us to deliver that. And, there's countless of stories every single day. I moved to Bayshore 10 years ago, and I befriended a homeless woman that for 10 years still is in the bus shelter every day when I go by, and it's right across the street from a different 7-Eleven that I go to get coffee.
All right, so we know where you like to get your coffee.
And I talk to her, and she's got a real story. She's got a real story of what happened to her and her family. So I think everybody's just going to take a little bit of an interest, to have a little bit more of humanity, and, we'll all do better. All boats will rise together.
Teresa from East West, the defense industry was an essential business all the way through.
Mhm.
And so you certainly have had a different experience than some other businesses who had to immediately pivot to your shutdown and you're working remotely. For you, the challenge is the flip side, right? You had to keep everybody at work.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious, what has been the most essential quality for you as you managed all those folks who I'm sure were afraid and they needed to be there?
Absolutely. So yes, when lockdowns were happening, the Air Force and the Navy immediately sent us letters that we were essential. They needed our equipment in order to keep going on. So how do you relate that to the employees who are now balancing, okay, I'm going to put myself at risk and I'm going to have to go out there to work? And I really said to myself, I needed to follow my 3 C's, my courage, my compassion, and my communication. Because you had to understand those people that, everyone felt a little safe. They could, those that could work remote, they didn't have to leave the house. They didn't have to, gas up their car or go to 7-Eleven and get their coffee. So when they walked into the door here at East West, I needed to make sure that they felt that they were in a safe environment, because I wanted them to be safe, not only for work, but when they leave work to go home, that they were then safe to their home, to their families at home. So that compassion really had to come out. We like to be strong, we like to be leaders, and we needed courage. But I needed to understand that compassion had to go along with that, because everyone was dealing with something in a different way. And we were very successful here by maintaining great, safe, healthy protocols for the employees, so they could go back to their families and understand that I am going to work, I'm putting myself at risk. But we say all the time, we're providing a product for those men and women in the military that are protecting our freedom. And it was important for us to keep providing that equipment.
So I'm going to invite the audience to send me questions, but I have one for you, Teresa, because they've already started to come in. And so, not surprisingly, we all know that the military is somewhat male dominated, and that we're certainly looking at a world that has lots of men and not a lot of women. So the question is, how did you handle the pushback from people in the business, maybe not necessarily at East West, who didn't want to deal with a woman in the defense business?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can tell you that I am happy to say that 37 years later, I see a big difference in acceptance within the military. And it's just so wonderful to see when there is a woman that is promoted to a level that a man is held for life. But I will tell you, coming out of college, and it was intimidating. But I think that always remembering who you are and having your self qualities. Listen, I was definitely put into, it's difficult to be in a meeting with, whether it was military people or whether it was work, and it's totally male dominated. You need to just take a breath and be confident in yourself And I think that came out. It took time, absolutely. But like I said, 37 years later, I'm very happy to see that. I love to go to, Boeing or Lockheed or Sikorsky and seeing all those great female CEOs and high-level positions within those organizations as well. So it's definitely much more accepted.
Debbie, when we look at what young women can do, and it certainly is different today, and we are certainly in a position where more women are in the news business, what would be your piece of advice for a young woman who wants to start a career in the news business?
I would say, and I actually have had this question a fair amount. I've gone to, my college and different places to talk to students coming up. And I think the most important thing is, the search for the truth, right? So, people will ask me like, well, should I learn digital? Should I learn, a TV skill? And for me, for them, the most important thing is to learn how to get to the bottom of a story and to learn what the truth of that story is and to be able to tell it. Because no matter, the mediums are going to change, whether it's a newspaper or radio or, TV or, digital, this and that, or TikTok, it's the story. And that's the most important skill to focus on before you focus on anything else.
So we've talked a little bit about the pandemic. We've talked a little bit about RBG. Teresa from United Way, the other big story in 2020 is what we will do as we move forward with race equity, diversity, and inclusion. And as leaders, we have to look at that question, right? It's critical to who we are and what we do. How are you approaching that on a daily basis?
So, we're fortunate that the United Way is with a brand nationwide that we have all last year pledged that in our missions and our focus, our investments in community, that we will take a hard look at the money that we're distributing inside of all our communities is contributed through a lens of equity and inclusion. And so for Long Island, we've got a lot of great organizations doing very impactful work. And those leaders of those organizations, whether it's Semper Mujer or Race Racism, Wyandanch Property and Homes, all of our talented, diverse women leading those organizations, it is really important for them to step forward in the forefront and find the courage also, and to be given the tools to push back a little bit and to really start working in a much more of an advocacy space. I think what happens a lot, in our business for sure, that there's not necessarily the capacity and the strength in positions, because the investment, especially in the smaller not-for-profit organizations, isn't vast. And so their messaging and their advocacy is dwarfed by their ability to really to get out in front. So, this organization and this United Way will do that with them. And we're actually having some conversation now with some organizations to try to see how we can partner with Pronto differently and help their messaging to leadership to pay attention at a much different level, especially with the dollars that they bring down from the state and federal government to move their agendas forward. It's really important that these community-based organizations are as equal in light of investment than some of their counterparts who are 10 times their size. So I think that's the role that we play. We'll take a look at making more investments in community and in projects that we see that are being impactful. We're working with a new group now, a millennial group in Wyandanch, young men, African-American men, really in the forefront of doing their work, Choice for All. I mean, there are a lot of great organizations. It's how we're investing in those organizations to build capacity to then bring more equity into the region.
Debbie, Newsday was at the forefront of a race equity issue before the pandemic started. And you have lots of reporters who have done some great work in that space. I'm curious about how you manage the issue from a staffing perspective. How do you make sure that the right people are in the right spot, and how there's opportunity for more diverse reporters and photographers and others that support your business?
At Newsday, that's quite important to us, both in the community and on our own staff. And so, when we, are looking for new reporters or videographers or editors, we, make a huge effort to reach out to the different communities and different groups that help us find great candidates, diverse candidates for Newsday. And then, within Newsday, we're continually looking at, and it's become a little harder in the pandemic, but looking at career paths for people and moving them forward. And I think, you would see in our, in our newsroom, quite a bit of diversity in terms of editors. And, that's so important, because what we've really tried to focus on is sort of bringing together Long Island. And we have been bringing in different groups like minority millennials to really understand, the issues that are facing the different communities, so that Newsday can, continue to improve in covering those issues and really understands them in a deep way. And so that's what we've been focused on over the last probably couple of years.
So I'm going to switch back to a little bit of a lighter topic. Work from home was something that we all sort of were doing very intermittently. Most of us were not doing that on a full-time basis. I'm curious, Debbie, how has your view of work from home changed? By the way, it now has an acronym, WFH. That's what everybody refers to. It took me a while to get used to that. I'm like, that just doesn't look right, but okay. How has it changed for you in 10 months? Because it's different today.
Oh, it is so different. That is such a great question. I actually really love it, because if you had asked me a year ago whether we could run our company from home, I would have said absolutely not. And now my view on that has totally changed. I think, our Newsday, so we're an essential business too, right? We have to continue to cover the news. We have reporters and videographers out in the field. They're actually kind of splitting between being out in the field and working from home. But we left the building probably 3 days after, sort of the shutdown was announced. Was able to get everybody working remotely very quickly. And we've really been operating very smoothly. The thing that I said before about, people and what they're doing, in some ways, we all learned Zoom. So we were not as, there were very few of us using Zoom before, before we went out.
By the way, that's the one thing I could give up tomorrow.
I know.
I'm ready not to do any more Zoom.
Yeah. But I do think that, it's now second nature, and I think the big thing is it's staying connected, because even though you're on Zoom and you're in meetings and that sort of thing, it's so important to, we do, I guess what we call a sort of wellness calls. Like, I'll pick up the phone and call just a random employee and say, how are you doing today? What's going on? What are you thinking? So while it is smooth, it is different. And, we're like other businesses right now looking at, well, maybe we're not going to bring everybody back to the office. And what's interesting about that is, a lot of people have sort of wanted to work remotely way before the pandemic. Just, I can get my work done remotely. I don't need to be in the office every minute. In fact, I can get more work done when I'm at home. And that's really sort of proving out. And so I think we, as we go back, we're going to think about it totally differently. And there will probably be areas of the business that don't go back.
So I think one of the interesting things is there are people who really wanted to work at home. I was not one of them. I never want to work at home. I hate it. I'm too easily distracted. I also, you said earlier today that it's the 7 a.m., open up your computer and start. I think the hardest part about working from home is having a separation between your personal life and your professional life. They tend to overlap way more often when you're working from home. Teresa from United Way, I know that you have had a big chunk of your staff working from home, not everybody. How have you managed it? How do you think differently about it today?
Yeah, so we've had, again, being an essential business in March, some of us have been here 7 days a week and haven't stopped. And we have about 50% of the operation out and 50% in. And the areas that are administrative, so finance and those administration areas, if they want to stay out, they can stay out. The great thing is that we're able to, inside of a week, have everybody 100% up with technology. And we changed our systems last year, our whole financial system, everything could be remote, all the checks can be done, payroll. So, you know, we were fortunate that we had started to make some movement to professionalize the organization in 2020 and sort of get us out of an environment, an old financial environment as well, and started to make those moves. So I think going forward, you know, this is where the flexibility now is coming, because I would never have thought, just like Debbie, that we could have done it and done well and keep up with the pace. And I think that I have a lot of staff people here who are have a lot of tenure, and we've given them the choice. If you with their managers, if you can stay out and you want to stay out and it's working for you and it's working for your, you know, direct lines of management, great, stay out. If it's something where you're like me and, you know, it's easier to come in, and I've got a few employees that are the same way, there's too much distraction at home, they would prefer to be in, then come in. And we've got very big protocols. We have a 31,000 square foot building. There's a lot of people in and out. We have about 6 tenants. We have a lot of visitors. So we've had to make a lot of concessions in terms of just being flexible with everybody coming in and out. And we also have a school for children with severe autism. That's a tenant right next to us. We've made a fair amount of accommodations to make sure that those kids and students are safe through special ed, Department of Education. So I think it's been really great that we now have a choice, another way, another opportunity to invite more people into our workplace space. We realize that even, you know, people who, you know, job sharing, people with disabilities, I mean, everything is now in more of an open opportunity because we've been able to be successful and to stay on pace. So I'm encouraged by the fact that, hey, listen, and the mileage in my car, I mean, normally I'll go like 25, 30,000 miles for business. I mean, I'm at 15,000. So, I mean, the time that we've sort of saved, not being on the road, being on traffic, being able to, you know, talk to people. The other day I had an opportunity to talk to like 600 people at PSEG on a call about giving and people getting motivated. That would have never happened if this was last year, no pandemic. So there's been some things that we take away that are positive that will make sure that when the world, we start turning to a vaccine, that we're going to keep parts of our business remote and have the opportunity for people that it really works for.
So the interesting thing is I still have school age children. And so the worst part of this is there'll never be another snow day again, I've been told, because there's no need for a snow day, just go virtual.
Yeah.
So I think they're a little disappointed about that.
Right.
Teresa from East West, I want to switch gears a little bit as we see light at the end of the tunnel, and we do. There's been an application to the FDA for the first vaccine. I suspect that will be followed quickly by the other 2 that are in process. Resilience is something we've talked about. We had to talk about it after 9/11. It was a very big topic after Superstorm Sandy. As you look at the coming months and there will be an end to this pandemic, how will you build resilience into your organization so that you can continue to be successful?
So I think that during, during this time, it's funny, everybody was talking about whether they liked being remote. And I know Dominique said she would, much rather be in the office. There's that whole balance between, you always want what you don't have. So those that could work remote, really wanted to be back. But I was also dealing with a lot of the employees that were here, and boy, I wish I could work remote. So you needed to create some resilience and some positive attitude here. And one of the things that we did too is we converted to a 980 work week. So most of the employees, that were on site, it was good for, they would work 9-10-hour days, and then every other week have a 3-day weekend. So we gave them a little bit of that ability to say, I can take a breath. Okay, I can have a longer weekend. And all of those little things, we did employee gratitude bonuses. So all of these little things that we did along the way are creating some resilience of how we're going to handle it in the future. And I totally believe, I have a very positive attitude. I think we're seeing a light at the end of the tunnel. There's going to be positivity out there. We just need to stay together and keep forging forward.
Debbie, I have to believe that in the news business, burnout is always a question mark, but I have to believe in the last 10 months, that is an issue that you have employees dealing with. How are you helping them figure out a way forward?
So good question. One of the things that, we did this last year during the pandemic, and, also with all of the protests going on in June, that created a lot of stress in coverage. People were working 24/7 on all of it. And even with the elections, we added what we called a day of reflection, so that people could take that day whenever they really felt, that they needed it for something, whether, they just needed to stop for a moment, or, whether they had something, a holiday that they, that we didn't recognize that they wanted to use it for. But it was their choice. And it was really interesting. I think of all of the things that we've done, we got so much positive feedback on that. It's because what it said to people was, you understand, like what we're going through. And I think it's hard, right? We have a lot of people who this year have not really taken vacation. So we're allowing people to carry over more vacation time to try to, deal with that. I think some of the things that, Teresa said before, and both said before, you have to be positive, right? You have to be, you have to, paint the future. This is where we're going. This is what we're doing. Keep people focused on it, and be, open to what they're going through. Somebody said before, I think it was you, Dominique, be kind. And I couldn't agree more. Whenever Pat and I talk to the employees, we're always telling them that, they are the most important thing to us, their health, their well-being, all of that. So, if people are uncomfortable coming in or, doing, going out and covering it, we talk through that, and, we work on that or work with that. So, because it's so important to us that, that the staff feels as comfortable as possible. And you're right, we are getting to the end of it. I think, the next 3 months are going to be tough, right? Because it's winter and it's harder and all of that, but we are going to get through it. And, we have, so many cool things going on at Newsday with the new TV studio and the theater that's coming online, and everybody's kind of chomping at the bit to, get back and start doing that. So we just have to be patient and kind of keep looking forward.
So I'm going to completely disclose indirectly how old I am, because back in the day when Oprah was on at 4 o'clock every day, she had on Dr. Randy Posh, and he did something called The Last Lecture. And if you have a few minutes, it's an incredible piece of video. But one of the things that he talks about is choose to have fun. And when I think about that in the last 10 months, I have tried to remember it and I've tried to identify the moments, but I'm curious, Debbie, how do you have fun in the midst of a pandemic?
Well, so I actually really love this question because I have this conversation with my husband all the time. And, you know, we're both in the house working, you know, we're sort of workaholics. We do work 24/7. We always have, even before the pandemic. That's just the way we are. But, you know, I tend to be a very positive person. And I said to him at the beginning of this, like, I have to find a way to find joy. And so for me, it was two things. One was I actually really love to cook, but I probably haven't cooked in 15 years because I'm commuting every single day, you know, 100 miles back and forth. So even on the weekends, like, I'm way too tired to cook. So I actually started cooking because we really couldn't go out, right? And so so that has been a lot of fun for me, really trying different recipes. Like, he's the guinea pig, you know, my kids are grown, so they're not around. But also the bigger piece of it that kind of ties into it is we have I live in Brooklyn, so, you know, don't have a big backyard, but we have like this little tiny patio that's probably like 12 feet by 12 feet. And it's really just been kind of like bricks and a table. So I spent the summer like putting in plants and, you know, organic stuff and putting solar lights everywhere. And so every night we would go out and have dinner out in the back, and that was my joy, right? So that and seeing my kids, my son is in California, but my daughter is in Brooklyn, and so we would invite her over, and she just graduated and got her MBA from NYU, and we had her graduation party in the backyard. We had her 30th birthday in the backyard. So it has become like this little 12 by 12 spot has become our place of joy.
That's great. Teresa from East West, how are you having fun amidst all of this?
So, okay, we're all sharing our ages, right? So I'm 58. I did something last weekend I don't think I did in probably 50 to 55 years. I had my granddaughter stay over, the 4-year-old, last weekend. And, you know, as we're driving to work every day, you know, you see these beautiful trees in the fall and with the golden colors. And every day when I pull up to my house, we have a beautiful tree on the front of our property. And one day, the tree was all the leaves were on the ground, like overnight. It was probably during, like, it happened in it.
It was that really windy night. Yes. I remember that last week.
All of those beautiful golden leaves were on the grass. When I had my granddaughter, I literally played in the leaves with her, just built a pile, and we did angels in the leaves and we threw them up in the air. I don't think I did that in 50, 55 years. I had such a smile on my face. First of all, to see it through my granddaughter's eyes at 4, but I couldn't believe at 58, I'm laying on the ground, throwing leaves everywhere. And it was great.
We really needed a photographer for that.
Yeah.
Teresa from United Way. All right, fun. You have some, you know, these are some pretty good ones. So what do you have to share?
You know, interesting, similar to Debbie a little bit. Everybody's really busy, so we don't really know our neighbors really well. And what this allowed us to do is we have now 4 couples that we are so close to, and we have decided, like, each month we just decided to have, like, we call ourselves the Last Supper Club, because we all went around the table and we put on a piece of paper, if it was our last meal, what would we want? And another couple has to make like that meal for everybody. And like, so now, like, some people decided it was breakfast, their last meal, lunch, or dinner. But the great thing is like, it's a lot of fun to get together with people, to have the time to get together, because quite frankly, no one really knows their neighbors really well anymore. And we're just really lucky that we have, you know, there's the 8 of us now who it's very funny. Like, if someone has like an event at their house and like people aren't invited. My next door neighbor's like, oh, did they invite you and not invite? I mean, it's really fun. So I have a hairdresser, a retired, two people from NFL that are retired from the NFL who are like IT people. We've got a new couple with a brand new baby, a little bit. So they're the young couple, but they're a lot of fun. So, I mean, that's really been a joy. And then, you know, my daughter who's 15, who's going to be 15 next week, since she can't have a party with more than, you know, 8 or 10 people, I am like planning 4 different little get-togethers for her and her 4 different now clusters and group. And, you know, tonight is the garage night with, you know, the Gilgo crew from her surfing club, or it's just, you know, you just keep it light and keeps everybody young, which is great.
So our biggest investment, and thank goodness we did this early, the last week in March, we bought a fire pit. And so we have 2 other couples who all the way through, we could have them in the backyard with a fire and blankets. And at the beginning, everybody was bringing their own drinks in the thermoses because it was cold, but it was a great opportunity to have those simple things. And I think it's really important as we look at Thanksgiving, we all know that gratitude will be something we talk about next week around our Thanksgiving tables, whether it's the same as it's always been, or it's a much smaller gathering, or it's around Zoom. I started the Remarkable Gratitude Challenge on Monday. And what I like about this one is they gave me a prompt for every day. That's much better. It's much harder if I have to do it on my own. And so I thought I would start the wrap up with, what are you grateful for? And I'm not going to give it to you quite that open. So Teresa, I'm going to let you go first. 5 things, Teresa from United Way, 5 things that make you smile. Not forever, right in this moment.
So my health first, you know, my family, certainly, you know, I'm so grateful for, you know, this community that rises up in a pandemic and a disaster and always does the right thing. My colleagues who are extraordinary, and my circle of really close friends. I got a phone call from my high school, one of my closest high school friends who we lost touch 10 years ago, but just out of the blue this week, she called, and I think friendships are really important. And so, you know, family, health, friends, colleagues, and a strong community are what I am most grateful for today.
Debbie, one reason your life is already great?
I would say family. I have the most amazing family, and they're spread out all over the place. I have my sister is down in Texas, and that's been hard actually not being able to see her, but we talk on the phone all the time. My kids are amazing. They call and we spend as much time as possible, even though we can't be together. And my husband's mother, who you know, is turning 90, she's like my best friend. My mom died many years ago, and so she has been there for me through all of this. And you know, I often describe her as kind of the Energizer bunny. She's just like, you know, she keeps the family going in the right direction and all of us moving forward, and she's so positive. And so that makes my life great, the family. And I need to add one other thing. My friends and colleagues at Newsday, so incredibly important. I spend, you know, they are my family too. I spend so much time with them every single day, and they are amazing. So I feel very blessed.
Teresa from East West.
Yeah, I think I want to echo what both Debbie and Teresa said. You know, I'm thankful for my husband. He's been my rock and my support, my children, my grandchildren, you know, my company, the employees here at East West. I'm really thankful for them. There wasn't everyone knows what our commitment here at East West is and what we strive for to provide the products to the military. They've been wonderful. I am also thankful for my health. You know, I can say that I have, you know, myself, my immediate family, we have not been affected by anything at all. And I think with what's going on right now, I'm thankful to be able to be healthy and strong for my family and the team here at East West.
And so this morning, I'm incredibly grateful for the three of you and for sharing all of your stories. I always find that out of everybody else's story, there's an opportunity for me to make my life a little bit better. And you certainly have given me that opportunity this morning. I will ask all of you who have joined us, if you have any other questions, by all means, shoot them over to us quickly. We'll try and get to a few more of those before we wrap up. And look, next year I am hopeful that we will be together. This is always a highlight for me of the fall. I enjoy being with all of you. I enjoy the networking and the opportunity to see faces, but I appreciate this morning the opportunity to spend time with each of you. I'm going to just see if Terry wants to jump in for one more moment and see if she wants to take this.
Yeah. So Dominique, I'm going to actually close this morning.
Perfect.
So thank you. So I wanted to thank you all again, Dominique. Thank you. Always do a phenomenal job as a moderator for this program. And thank you to all of our panelists this morning. I mean, your stories, your journey, your paths are truly inspiring. And I appreciate just the transparency that you all shared with us this morning. So thank you. Thank you all again. As just a quick wrap up, we did want to go ahead and show that video. It's very brief, so we wanted to just bring it up and just kind of, again, as a culmination this morning for Senator Kirsten Gillibrand. So we're just going to show that very briefly.
Good morning to all of you attending the Hauppauge Industrial Association's Executive Breakfast this morning. I'm Senator Kirsten Gillibrand. This morning's program, focused on women and the economy, is one of the many that I hope will happen on Long Island and all across New York. As we continue on a path to economic recovery, women must play a crucial role in fueling the country's economic strength and competitiveness and rebuilding our middle class. First, we need to recognize the incredible contributions women make to our economy today. Women are graduating from college and advanced degree programs in record numbers and represent nearly half the American workforce. In New York, over a quarter of all small businesses are owned by women. However, despite the significant role women play in our economy, we continue to face challenges. Less than 3% of Fortune 500 companies are led by female CEOs, and only 16% of those companies' board seats are occupied by women. And to this day, women still make just 78 cents on the dollar compared to men. African American women are making 71 cents, and Latinas are earning 62 cents. When women earn equal pay, we will strengthen the middle class, stabilize our economy, and improve the lives of millions of American families, allowing us to save for our children's college and our own retirement. Women will be the driving force in ensuring American prosperity in the global economy for decades to come. With more and more women gathering to discuss these important topics, I know that we can all make the difference. I look forward to continuing to work with groups like the HIA and the leaders in the room today.
All right. Well, again, as she said, there is such this economic movement, and she really understood, the power of women coming together and taking on these leadership roles. So, again, it was great to hear from all of our panelists and just showing how they're leading the way in our business economy. So with that, I'd like to just invite everyone to two of our upcoming programs. We have Those Who Make a Difference celebration on Thursday, December 10th. We'll be honoring 5 distinguished individuals who've made a difference in our business economy, in the community this year specifically. And then coming up in 2021, we will have our 43rd annual meeting and legislative program on Friday, January 22nd. So I encourage you, if you can join us for either of those, to please do so. And then just following today's program, there will be a short survey that we ask you to please fill out so we can get your feedback. And again, I want to thank everyone for joining this morning, and I'm wishing everybody a very happy Thanksgiving, happy holidays. And again, thank you to our panelists for joining us and for sharing today. And have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks all.
Bye, thank you.
Thanks, Dominique.
Thank you, Dominique.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
all.
Bye, Debbie. Bye,
Bye-bye.
Teresa.
Bye. Great to meet some of you, all of you.
Great, Deb.
Thank you.